AIDS-Link is a ministry of OM International. The goal is to motivate and mobilise OM fields around the world to respond to and be involved in the HIV/AIDS pandemic. The problem with HIV/AIDS is you don't really know you've got a problem until it's way too late. I mean, the first case was in 1981 in Southern Africa, and now you've got countries sitting at 40%, 30% HIV positive. Countries that 10 years ago were 1 or 2% are now 20 or 30%, and we need to react or respond before it gets to that stage. We're starting to see people around the OM world become more aware of the AIDS crisis. We're starting to see people who understand HIV a little bit more. We're seeing ministries start in different countries, and we're starting at least to know what is happening on the ground. We've got volunteers going out there working, we've got organisations that we partner with, and OM is starting to make a difference. Churches are starting to become aware that they can actually make a difference. The church historically has been good at caring for people, and people with HIV/AIDS need care. The church also has been good at educating people. You see, mission schools all over the world, the same as hospitals, and we need to educate people about HIV/AIDS. And of course, ultimately, we're all going to die anyway, and the church is the only one that can give us the answer to eternity. People with AIDS who die of AIDS have a pretty bad life down here on earth, so let's make sure that at least they have a hope for eternity. I met a lady in southern Zambia who to me is something of a miracle. You meet Juliet and she's got a smile going from one ear to the other. She's a wonderful African lady. She lives in a little village there. She's a committed Christian, been a committed Christian for many years. A few years ago, Juliet started feeling sick, and her son also was sick. So they went to a doctor, and the doctor told her that she was HIV positive and her son was negative. Her husband had recently left her for another woman. Juliet was furious. She was mad with God. She was mad with her husband. God, I'm a committed Christian. Why has this happened to me? It just isn't fair. And she went to her husband and asked him about it. And he said, well, actually, I've known for 3 years I've been HIV positive. But he just somehow didn't bother to tell her. Yeah, there's the thing with truck drivers, the men who work in factories in the coal mines. A lot of these men, they're away from their wives. They go to prostitutes, or they have girlfriends or another wife. Somebody needs to get to them to educate them and to give them a change of mindset, and that would be a huge thing. Juliet is fortunate in that she comes from one of the few churches where the pastor actually knows what's happening. And the pastor noticed there's something wrong with Juliet, and he started counselling her and talking to her, and eventually brought her to the place where she could forgive her husband for infecting her and forgive God for letting her get infected. Juliet was the first person to stand up in her church and admit to being HIV positive. Now, you need to understand that might not sound like such a big thing, but in southern Zambia, people have been stoned to death for admitting to being HIV positive. There's incredible discrimination, and sure enough, some people went to Juliet and said, you're a sinner, God is judging you, and that sort of thing. But more people came to her and said, I'm also HIV positive, please, what can I do? And now Juliet runs a little group, meeting with people, giving support to them. And to me, the miracle of Juliet's story isn't, that she was healed or anything like that, although that would be great, of course. The miracle is that God has changed this woman's heart to the point where she can accept her status and she can actually go on and help other people. We are all going to die one day, but Juliet can do it, knowing that she has a life ahead with Christ. I've talked to people in Zambia who've told me about whole villages that have almost ceased to exist. 9-year-old children bringing up their family members, grandmothers, who should be enjoying their old age with 4 or 5 children to look after, who've lost all their kids. I met 2 old ladies in Zimbabwe, and between them they'd buried, I think it was 7 children, probably most of them of AIDS, and they were looking after their grandchildren. AIDS is affecting everybody in this continent. This whole thing of ministering in the HIV/AIDS crisis, I actually sometimes think I must be absolutely nuts, because you go into an orphanage, you see all these kids running around, and you think, how can we possibly make a difference in this situation? It is so big, it's massive, and you just feel so small and so useless, and like anything you do is just a drop in the bucket. Governments can try to help in this crisis, and they need to, and they should do, and it's their responsibility. But really, it's us, it's the church, it's the body of Christ. The body of Christ is HIV positive because there are people in the church who are HIV positive, and we are the only ones that can help. We need help from government. We need money from government. Any help the government can give is great, but ultimately it's going to come down to us.